that's enough. I started with an energetic introduction because we have a DJ today with us on the show. So welcome everybody to another episode of the TRoman show. I'm joined by my co-host, T. Matthew Phillips. By the way, Facebook showed me that we have a friend anniversary. So we are now friends for a year, at least according to Facebook, right? But we have a distinguished guest today. So Coach Amul P, content creator, public father, DJ, and I'm certainly forgetting other major, milestones in your biography. So please take it from here for those who don't know you.
Well, let me introduce myself. I know T. Matthews. I got to interview him on the Father's Rights Movement. I was a host over there for over a year. I did a live show, averaged 10,000 viewers a week. Had a great time. But just a blessing to work with you, Roman. You are what I want to call the true meaning of grassroots and starting from the ground up. I actually have been following you for quite some time since you've been in New York City, going live in front of the courthouses and helping people get out of jail and things like that where their rights are being violated. As far as myself, I was a DJ. Before this, I was a radio host on 103.3 in a major city, Charlotte, North Carolina. I took broadcast communications and I was an on-air personality. I DJed for Akon, who's most people know who Lady Gaga is, but he was the manager of Lady Gaga. His brother is Kanye West's manager, Chris Brown's manager, several of those big name artists. I was a touring DJ for the company of Convict Music. So I got to work with a lot of celebrities and see, a celebrity life where there was little problems because money seemed to solve a lot of those problems. I myself, in the end of my career as a DJ, I had a child and I was a little older and mature. I want to say this, that I wanted to be a father. And I stopped DJing and being a famous DJ or a local celebrity, what I call it, in Charlotte, to just raise a family. When there was a break in the relationship, and the relationship sometimes fail, this is kind of normal, I guess, in 2024 because of social media. We went our separate ways. And then I basically had to fight for my rights to be a father. And I understood nothing about the family court process of representing yourself because I came from a career where I made money and money used to solve a lot of problems. So now having to work just as hard as everyone else does as a body shop owner and a small business owner in my community, I had to face top lawyers in a courtroom where I just wanted to be a father. And this ended up leading me to looking for answers. I wanted to look for questions and answers. I needed someone to help me. I was desperate. I was suffering from depression, anxiety, things that you would normally suffer from if you're separated from your children. And the rest of society kind of looked at me in the court system like he's crazy. But it was that I had a bond with my child since birth. I spent so much time with him. And then because the relationship broke up, the baby just became, I want to say, a tool against me in this breakup. And so I searched for a lot of answers and ended up coming across the Father's Rights Movement. And they had an emotional support line and things like that where I got to talk to somebody. And after being there for a little while, I got to be on an interview with the Father's Rights Movement and take my story to the world, and which led me to now where I'm at with you, advocating for other fathers for their rights, understanding our Constitution, due process, motion to compels and reconsiders and motion to dismiss, just learning these things that I probably won't want to use in my life. And if you would just give me my child fairly, I probably wouldn't even be here today. But because God and people like you stood up and showed me that, hey, listen, we can do this together, I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to this nonprofit I started, Amul Vision, in which we give the voiceless a voice. And I use what I have, my voice, to speak up and help parents, whether it's proofread their papers or talk to other parents, be a support, a shoulder, somebody that they can talk to, and just literally just be there for somebody. Because sometimes in the midst of going through your own custody battle or entering family court with a divorce, you tend to talk to so many people in the story, you say it over and over, that they forget that they've said this story so many times that some of these people don't care, or that goes back to the wrong ears, and their privacy is so violated that it's used against them in the court of law, even if it's social media. I think me and you had this conversation earlier, Roman, about social media and these gag orders, interfering with the Constitution of your freedom of speech. And I don't mean to keep running off, but it's starting to get to the point where we, as the people have to make this change. We will have to reunite to make changes. And I don't know where you guys feel about that, but there's my introduction. I'm Amul P, Coach Amul P.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Matthew?
Well, I agree with the sentiment. There has got to be change, and I think the change begins with understanding the problem. And I think the problem is that we are seeing through the family court, we are seeing an attempted worldwide communist takeover. That is the fact, and it's a tragic realization. But in order to change things, I think we have to realize that the communists, these godless communists, they want to take over, and we're witnessing that now. And I think recognizing that is the first step to change.
Yeah, no, I would respectfully agree. I want to acknowledge the audience. I see the count here picking up, so that's great. I know that Amul, you are also a coach. You are also live streaming it on your end, and we'll preserve the recording so people will be able to watch it later. But thank you very much for that introduction. I think it's very important, as we discussed previously, and that's kind of a refrain, returning talking point on our shows, is that all people who are public need to unite, need to band together, because that's the way to show others that you can do that, right? You can do it.
Yeah.
You can go public. You need to go public because if we lost our rights on so many fronts, right? For example, my favorite example, not very favorite, but we lost our right to a jury trial. It's the only right that appears twice in the United States Constitution, the 6th and 7th Amendment, where it is, nobody gets it aside from 2 states. And actually, you have examples of more favorable outcomes there. But, due process, right? 14th Amendment, equal protection by law, right? The supremacy of the Constitution. So at least, you have the public conscience that, First Amendment, freedom of speech is something very, very, fundamentally American. But if that right is not utilized, is not exercised, right, is not leveraged, we'll lose it again as well. And that's going to be the end of it, and that's where this whole train to Auschwitz is going. So it's very important to connect. And now we're combining audiences, so people who maybe don't know about me or T. Matthew Phillips on your show, right, and people who are not familiar with your story, the audience that I'm blessed with, it's very important. And everybody, it might look semi-professional, somewhat crude, but we are people, right? We're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Maybe with a little more courage, right? But because we're pressed into the corner to be courageous, and that's where God, places us. So it's very, very important. Now, before we dive into a couple other topics, I think it's going to be very interesting to hear your point, because you mentioned that my project and Matthew's project, if you call it project, started as a grassroots effort, right? We
Right.
just coming from our circumstances. You joined a more established, I would say, movement, right?
Yeah.
Now you're branched into something of your own, without,
Right.
of course, discarding your past. So that's an interesting perspective. But before we do that, maybe just to connect with the audience, I think the circumstances of your case, to the extent that you're willing to share, I don't want to push
Yeah.
it, but just to connect to an emotional level, because people know that I have my case. My tormentor was. Continues to be Janet McFarland, Richmond County Family Court, Reichman County Family Court. The AFCs. Their names are public. I mentioned their names. Ian Berliner and Nicholas Murgolo, Rita Kaufman. You can Google them. You can see them. Just put them in search bar, and on Facebook you'll see what I have to say about them. Or you can just Google me, TRoman, and see the judges that I sued in federal cases. Recently, I filed a response to a motion to partially dismiss one of the cases that I have against Robert Lavanto, the court guard. That's one of the cases that we're hopefully making progress. So, but you have 3 kids, right?
I do. I have 3 kids whom I love very, very much, regardless of what they heard or what they think. I do love them all very, very much.
Yeah, and you kind of, all of them have different stories. Obviously, different children have different stories. But you saw the system from many angles, right? As a single father, as a dispossessed father and as a father who is fighting for custody right now. So maybe just briefly touch upon that if you're comfortable,
So
we.
I'll talk as much as I can about it. I'll talk about the first situation. I was 17 years old. I was raised with a hard work ethic from some immigrants. My parents are from India. They don't do drugs. They don't drink alcohol. They don't commit crimes. They are good working, hardworking citizens. They didn't make a lot of money. They worked in factories. So I pretty much was raised by the other American children that I hung around with. In that, I had a baby very young at the age of 17 years old. Having a baby at 17 years old, and being from a community of Indians and these type of people that have arranged marriages, they didn't really accept having a child. They didn't really love the child at first. They didn't want nothing to do with it. But for me, I guess I was young, and I was raised in a church because my parents put me in that church, and that church family supported me to go and fight to be a father. So by the time I was 18, I had a good job, my own place. I had a steady employment. I had a stable home, a little bit better than the mother of the child. And I did go to family court. I was active in my case, and I won full custody. I was one of the youngest persons in South Carolina. And people can look that up if they want to later. But in South Carolina, I was 18 years old, and I was awarded a transitional custody where the grandmother had custody of the child, and there was a more versus more factor that allowed me to exercise my parental rights, and it gave me full custody in a transitional period. So it went from every other weekend, like the Browns law, to 3 days a week, 4 days a week after a month, and then eventually I had full custody, and I allowed the child to see the great grandmother whom I went to court. Obviously, that was bad blood. Now, people out there listening could probably understand why. When you go through a court battle, if you win, you just don't really want nothing to do with the other party too much unless you have to. So as my child grew up and I was young, I actually had my mother and my mother and my stepfather help me so much that my son actually ended up falling in love with my mother and my stepfather, that he pretty much is like theirs. But at the same time, I raised him. I was a single father. I lived with him for the first 6 years until I asked my mother that I wanted to go on tour with Akon and I would like to travel. My mother said, yeah, that's fine. You have full custody. Will you give us custody? And he continued to grow. And today he is a good man. He went to college at Charleston. He graduated. He still moved out of my house eventually and moved in with my mother, which I'm very grateful for. And I'm happy. We have a good relationship. I didn't think I was going to end up in family court. That's the first child. So he did grow up and go off to grandma, but because grandma and grandpa took him to these places and did things with him, that I was young, wanted money as a young father, single father. I wasn't mature enough to understand what I had won. I had won the rights to my child. Now today, I wouldn't miss a moment of my child's life, but as an 18-year-old boy, I missed out on a lot. Later on, throughout that touring lifestyle, I did have one baby out of wedlock that where I was traveling. I didn't get a chance to meet this daughter, but she did go to DSS and get child support started on me. The child support was quick, just jumping. Hey, put him on child support. So take me to court. They say he makes so much money. Put him on child support. Obviously, in the fame game or in work, sometimes you don't make as much money as you did when you first started paying child support. So I asked for some visitation rights, and I asked to reduce my child support because I would have ended up going to jail because my lifestyle and my bills and my car payments and house payments were so high that the child support was actually like something I couldn't even afford. But I also didn't have rights to that child. So after I started pursuing some rights and being able to have visitation, the mother didn't show up to court. Now, when the mother didn't show up to court, the judge pretty much gave us two options. This is still where I'm still kind of immature. I'm still about 25 years old. Remember, I have a child I'm taking care of. My mother is helping me. The mother didn't show up to that hearing. And in that hearing, the judge basically made two choices. And he said, listen, I can extinguish the entire order, or I can bring her back into court for contempt. I was very young. I'm not going to lie to you or anybody in this audience. I was like, well, they extinguish the order. I can still have my parental rights, correct? He said, yeah, I won't terminate your parental rights, but I will terminate this support order because the mother refuses to allow you to see your child, and she refuses to come to this court and be heard. So DSS was the petitioner and the plaintiff, as I was the defendant. They dismissed it. They filed their own motions. They took me to court, and the DSS petitioned the court to end the child support and order. Well, I thought, hey, maybe I'll still be able to see my daughter, because some of my family was still friends with the family of the daughter. They were the gatekeepers. They were the alienators who didn't let my messages, my presence, or my love get to my child. So as I grew up, like I said, I'm 30. At this point, I'm almost 35 years old. I haven't seen my daughter in 10, almost 12 years. I start asking questions because I'm getting mature. I'm not out here in the clubs with 18-year-old kids partying. I'm not drinking. I'm trying to be mature. And I start asking these questions like, where can I see her? When can I see her? So I felt parental alienation, but I didn't know at the time what parental alienation was, because I was just trying to be a father and still be a good dad to my other kid. I had responsibilities, right? Later on, again, I have one more child. Now, remember, I had all three children out of wedlock. So if anybody wants to judge me, that's fine. I just don't do toxic relationships. So we broke up. This one ends up in court, but at this time in my life, I have surrendered to God. I found faith in something that I believe in, and I don't knock anybody's deity or deity or whatever religion they are. But for me, I found Jesus, and I turned my life over, and I say, hey, I want to be a father. I want to make a difference, and I want to share moments with my child. The mother is a law enforcement officer, so take this in account. They're very connected. In the government, a lot of people may know each other. And we feel this. Well, she took me to court for child support, and what ended up happening is that the court in the temporary hearing saw that I was 100% active in my child's life. I did pay for his daycare. The court actually awarded me primary care and custody with child support. In the first temporary order, I was awarded, of this child that's 3 years old now, I was awarded primary care. I was awarded child support. And I just wanted my child to not be upset with me in the future. I didn't want to be unfair. I wasn't out to get her. There was no revenge. I don't hate her. That's the other half of my child, right? And I don't mean to ramble off, but I gave her back 50-50. I signed a mediated agreement with an attorney before the final hearing. We adopted a mediated agreement, which a lot of my friends call the MOMA, the MOMA. They call it the MOMA. And I look at court as the daddy. So the court came in, the daddy signed this Miranda mediated agreement. The judge actually turned it into a final order, which is now enforceable by the powers of contempt. I thought it's over. I'm happy. I get to be a father. I get my kid 7 days. She gets them 7 days. There's no child support. We have all the agreements, how we exchange the child. But less than 4 months and a few days later, she got upset. She said, I want full custody. False allegations started erupting. And the court, out of abundance of caution, this is what I want people to understand, that abundance of caution, they go ahead and give a temporary relief. Now, they didn't take custody away. I still have the 7 days off and 7 days on, but they put some stipulations in a temporary order, which most parents can relate to. Temporary orders can become final orders. So here I am scrambling. I've already paid so much money for the first hearing, raising my kid, helping with college and bills and things like that, that I really, as a working class American making what just an average American makes, I can't just afford an attorney over and over and over. So I decided I will represent myself pro se. I want my child to have a documented record of what I did, because I will put this in what I call God's hands. I will do my best. I will try the best of due diligence. I will be active in every case, and I will continue to pursue this action. And this is where I meet people like T. Matthew Phillips, Roman, George Saldana, Zach Martin, Alicia Blaylock, Mark Ludwig, Linda Moore, Thomas Fiddler. I start meeting these people who actually give me a view to understand and see. And after talking to tens of thousands of fathers, I actually get to see more than most parents do. So I took that, and I'm helping dads, but I'm still in this fight myself. In fact, I have a motion for dismissal on Monday, which I'm, and you may understand this because you guys are smart. Rule 12B6, right? Failure to state a claim. I'm going to go after this claim as it lacks sufficiency of a claim. That, I mean, we shouldn't be in there. Even if you were to say all the allegations were true, it still doesn't have a clause. And you got to go into what I want people to remember, the plausibility or the possibility of whether this is true. For you to continue this action, the other party or the plaintiff must prove that there's a plausibility. And if you can say that it falls short, then it's just like a famous person said, justice delayed is justice denied. And there's a lot of people in line for family court that need to be heard, so they're not losing time with their children. But because of false allegations, our courts are filled and flooded, and some of these fathers and mothers are missing time with their parents. And all I can do is advocate and be a shoulder to say, whatever you need, my brothers and sisters, I'm here. I will do anything I can. There's not a moment that I'm not working in my shop that I won't put my Bluetooth on and talk to a dad, talk to a mom, talk to an attorney, talk to a politician, whoever, whatever, to try to bring about change. Because the fact is, I just want our public servants to honor the oath, the Constitution, and put that back in, which it says in God we trust. So there's my spew on the three kids and how I'm here today with you guys, blessed to be here.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you very much for this overview. I wanted to, thank you for sharing that. It's important that, the audience and, actually we're all friends now, all the familiar names. I'll acknowledge everybody in a second, can relate, right? It's not an academic exercise for us. We all experience that, we all dispossessed father to some degree. And you have a unique background because, one child essentially is raised to maturity, right? So thank God for that, and you have a daughter that the connection hopefully will be reestablished, but right now you don't have a connection,
I know.
which is the opposite side of the spectrum. So it's very, very hard, and we know what you are talking about. And then third child that you are actively fighting over, right? So that's you have a unique perspective. You also public, and that's a great introduction to what we actually need to be discussing, right? That's the broader picture. I just want to quickly acknowledge in the audience. So John is here. Thank you, John. An unwavering supporter. Father X from YouTube, a great content creator as well. So I have a bone to pick with the statement that the system is broken. It's not broken. It works perfectly as designed. But thank you for joining, and everybody just check out that channel.
Roman, if I may say one thing real quick, what two of the stories that stood out to me, right, was Jason D'Souza and Cash Jackson. And I don't know if everybody knows, but once you become an advocate, you start getting familiar with the names of the people most affected by this that didn't shut up. And that means I actually love them and I respect them because they are the real victims. The children are the real victims of what happened in their cases. But we are still having a system that says the best interest of the children. How is keeping a father who has been loving, trying to be with his child? My situation isn't even as bad. When I look at Jason and I look at Cash and I look at even the father that got killed, and the John Mass story, which is really touching, and it almost makes me want to cry when I think about it. But who was a loving father who went to go see his just kids and got shot by the father-in-law. These stories, even Robert Garza having so many allegations, these stories have touched me and opened my eyes. It's gut-wrenching to see some of these stories, man. They're real. They're real.
Yeah. So that's really the topic. I just I wanna make sure that the audience knows that we know that you are watching. We are grateful. That's important. Without the audience, right? You cannot be a content creator if nobody consumes your the stuff that you create, right? So Michelle is here. Thank you very much. Saying hello, gentlemen. William is joining. He has a comment to you, but maybe we'll refer to that. Justice J, you were in Washington D.C. right recently, so that's going to be interesting. Part to cover. Mm-hmm. Derek is here, so thanks everybody, and I'm sure that the other people that I just don't have the time to mention, but let's dive into that because I think it's very, very interesting perspective. So what you're describing is a typical process, right? You were just a guy minding his own business, right? Going becoming successful, right? Clearly made a lot of money as a DJ. It's a stellar job, right? And then you will get dragged into the relationship with all the things, you mature as a father. But at that point, you don't realize what is parental alienation. You never heard the term. You were in family court without even realizing. And only after the third kid, right, now you're in that, you start seeing the depth of the cesspool and the sophistication of the sewers we all are dealing with, right? So, and that's and that's a process that many people now, with legal background like myself, or being a formal attorney like T. Matthew Phillips, right? Even people who have the formal education, they still don't realize how sophisticated, how clever, how clandestine the system is. That's something that we need to discuss, because the government, who is behind all that, right? there's no doubt that we're dealing with interpersonal relationship, right? So all of us have faults, maybe choosing the wrong partner, or maybe not taking care of the relationship. I don't know. Many factors are there, but undoubtedly the government created the system that actually leverages, right, and utilizes, or what's the word? It's actually it takes the worst out of people, right, and formalize it in the system that creates and perpetuates the abuse, right? So what you are saying, you have an agreement, you acted out of good faith, and now you're being abused with no end in sight, right? So my fight is going into its 8th year, right? Timothy Phillips, has an equal time. So, and that's a part that even many people, like, you see fathers bashing mothers, mothers bashing fathers, right? But nobody talks about the government role, and that's the judge's role, right? The attorney's role, the attorneys for the children role, right? The legislators, right? The journalists don't cover that. The experts who are not vocal, right? All that has to be discussed. It's not, government knows that females and males are attracted to each other, and also have a rivalry essentially built by God, right? Between us, in a sense, right? We need to collaborate, to complete each other. But this whole aspect that we are dragged by that concept of a primordial snake, right? This is something that we need to focus on, and that's what especially young people don't understand. So that's my take on it. Matthew, you have anything to color?
I couldn't have said it better in a million years. I concur 100%.
Can we take a second to talk about social media for just 1 second? Social media has allowed anybody and everybody, whether you're rich, poor, fat, skinny, to be able to have a platform to stand on. So I actually, people say, oh, it's going to be used in your case, and it's going to, well, I mean, at least I want to be me for my kid and let him know that, your dad was a broadcaster. I was on the radio. I did do 6 TV shows when I was younger. I had a career, and I don't want that to be my identity be taken by a family court. So I'm not wanting to ever lose my child, but I don't want to lose my identity, because I want my child to be able to inherit that identity. Your dad loves music. Your dad loves instruments. Your dad loves cars. Your dad loves these things. The family court, to me, seems to have been trying to rob me of this, because they're taking my time, my resources, my energy, and I have to make decisions when it comes to spending this money on this transcript or spending it on some new tires on my car. And this is not a decision that's hard to make, because we put our children first. I've never met a deadbeat that goes to court and fights for his child. They label us or label these parents deadbeats, but a lot of them just got so beaten dead in real life from a family court or a temporary order or some kind of psychological evaluation that looks like it's bad and it's going to be used against them. And here they might lose their kid because some doctor took 30 minutes to 2 hours to evaluate somebody. The truth is, these judges don't know the whole situation, so they can't really rule on the best interest of the child. They're not educated in medical. They're not educators in schools. They're not psychologists. They're not all of the things that we put supposedly for the best interest of the child when you go to a family court, whether it's a custody evaluator, whether it's a mediator, because you can't bring up mediation in a final hearing. You can't bring up these affidavits that were used against you in a temporary hearing. There's so many rules, and it's almost like you got a civil rule, you got a federal rule, you got another rule, you got a court rule, and they have the discretion that's so broad. I don't think any of the rules even matter. When you get there, you find out what the real rules are if you're a pro se litigant. And if you have an attorney, you better not act out in court. You better not show faces, because that might cost you your kid. You might be the best dad, best mom in the world, but hey, the judge doesn't like you. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think a lot of judges, if they come in there and the last case was bad and they didn't like the father, and they might have a bad day with the rest of the fathers. And it's sad that our children are the collateral damage of a person in a robe who abused their power. And it's hard to hold them accountable, because at the end of the day, you could care less about that judge. You just want time with your child, and you just want an unabused, unmolested relationship with your family. That is your family. I mean, would you agree with that? I don't know.
I would agree.
We need to have accountability,
Right.
Definitely.
Right. I think the conversation. the conversation like like the one that we are having right here
Yeah.
needs to
Yeah.
raise to another level, because we all mired in the minutia of our cases, right? And the judges, and again the relationship with the ex, and speaking about the time with the child, and of course it's all very important, right? But it doesn't address the core issue. The core issue that is we are facing a deliberate government policy to destroy children, destroy parents. The word that I was looking for is exploitation.
Yeah.
They're exploiting human nature, right? So the government is provoking the rift between parents, right? You have the incessant propaganda for both sexes, right? You have the women, the feminist movement, and then males, it's considered some sort of achievement if you have relationship with a lot of women, right? So we all constantly barraged by that propaganda, right? And eventually, when they create the rift, right, then incessantly the government exploits it and tries to widen it to such an extent that it can never be mended. And they do it to family courts. So when we speak about judges, we speak about experts. We need to understand that men and women do not operate in a vacuum, right? We operate in an environment that's artificially, deliberately, and very, very thoughtfully created by the government. So all these courts, right, and the judge being, affected by the previous case or whatever, that's a system that they created, right? So the people, will need some sort of conflict resolution system. We can talk about that, right? How ideal it should look, right? Every religion, prescribes creation of courts of law. That's fundamental thing, right? Without
Right.
courts of law, how would they look? These are the, that's very, very basic commandment in the Bible, whatever version you read, right? So that's very, very important, because people will have conflicts. But if you didn't have the propaganda, right, the constant, brainwashing, like this recent, you can talk about that, social media, right? This whole conundrum with the bears, right? That who will choose the man or male or bear, right? So what is that? That's another brainwashing exercise, right? By the government, right? So vilifying all men, saying that men are dangerous, they would prefer like some sort of wildlife specimen, which is ridiculous, right? All that, it's part of the constant brainwashing. Once you are trapped in that, right? You're trapped in the fantasy that you can create some sort of better life, then you go in court, and then that's where really the government actually closes the trap, right? And you are caught there unless you walk away, forced to walk away, or you somehow compromise. So this has to be the focus of the conversation, in my opinion, because the government in every area, by the way, they like us to fight with each other. Divide and conquer. That was the ruling. So it's men and women, children and parents. That's fundamental thing. So it diverts attention from the real perpetrators, right? So, and we, as somebody who are not afraid to speak about that, we need to constantly shine the light on that.
So let me say something about that. When we say, I want to say, whether it's infighting or creating a high conflict environment, the family court system is designed to create high conflict by opening old wounds. Now, even in my case personally, remember, I have a final order in place, what we would call the status quo, or we would call the finality in judgment, right? So I will continue to object on relevance if they keep speaking about things before the final order. But I watched in my last hearing where they continue to talk about the past. Now, they're wasting time and resources because something that happened 17 years ago or 12 years ago really doesn't have a place of relevance. But one judge, based on their own discretion, has changed the federal rules of procedure and said, okay, well, you know what? I know we took a judicial notice on this, which you guys, maybe the viewers can read about this. They took judicial notice on this. I made sure right when I started the case, I said, hey, I would like the court to take judicial notice of this final order, which is it's still here. And even in the temporary order, it says all parts of this order that don't contradict are still enforceable and are still in full force with the powers of contempt. I want to say this with adding on to what you said. They are adding, the Guardian is asking for $15,000 more now. But this is such a limited scope of where we were from a finality of judgment to where we are now. This short period could be investigated very quickly. But because if someone makes a false allegation and that one doesn't stick, here comes another one. But the court is encouraging it because I know that the actors are getting paid. I know that the Guardian, I know that the mediators, I know that the judges and everybody in that courtroom, including the transcribers, all the way down to these actors of a transcriber who doesn't mind typing up 400 pages for you to get $2,000. This is the problem, is it shouldn't be a business. Our children shouldn't be a business. But like you said, the the high conflict that is created by courts by violating someone's human rights is the problem fundamentally, that we are humans, and if you attack humanity, then what do we have left, Roman? I mean, what do we have left if we attack a person's human rights? What is left of our society and civilization?
Slavery. That's what's left, and that's where we are. We are
I believe it.
slaves, and that people need to understand we are slaves to the government. And unless people recognize it, right, it's very sophisticated slavery, because it's slavery when people don't see their chains, but they're chained. I'm chained to the New York plantation. I cannot leave. My kids are here, right? And
Yeah.
I would leave in a heartbeat. I cannot, right? And that's very clever. They create an environment that promotes the type of
Yeah.
animosity that you described, and that's how they bring people who are potentially way more productive, right? And even if people like myself or productive people leave, people are leaving New York in droves, right? They will still get the federal money. So it's a very, very clever system of oppression. So, but
Would you, would you say?
Matthew, I want to let Matthew speak, because I don't want to subsume. We are obviously we're very passionate about that. So Matthew, you please chime in.
Well, I have to say, I enjoy being an audience member as much as anybody else, and both of you are terrific, and I could listen to both of y'all all day long. But one thing I did want to say that I keep thinking about is it's not so much about changing the laws, although that's part of it, but I think we have to really realize that there is this communist takeover. They want to enslave everybody completely. They want to completely destroy the family unit. If they can disintegrate the family unit, it makes it that much easier for them to take over society. And so I think we need to be aware of this at all times, and we need to tell those people who are coming into the system. It's not so much about learning what is the rule of evidence, or what code section do I cite here. Those are important things to know, obviously, but I think the understanding that there is an intentional governmental effort to fracture the family unit, a divide and conquer sort of principle, that once a family is weakened, you can brainwash the children, you can enslave the parents harder. And sadly, the children grow up thinking that the government decides where I live. The judge decides. It's not mommy and daddy who call the decisions. It's the judge who's in charge. And they want to stamp that on the minds of the minor children. And we should be aware of that. I think we should even bring it up to the judges and remind them what it is that they're doing, because it is an awful thing, and it's a Holocaust in a very real sense. And the perpetrators of the Holocaust in Central Europe some 80 some odd years ago, they didn't want anybody to know about it any more than the family court today doesn't want the general public to know what goes on inside family courts. And there is a conspiracy of silence within the media, within the tabloid news, any kind of, even online. There's a huge push to kind of quiet that. But I think it's important to know and to recognize that that's what's going on, and we have to take a stand against it. You mentioned things like a moment ago, I always take notes, but the idea of any kind of mental health exam, I would automatically just absolutely say no. Just this, unless they have a search warrant, and the search warrant is actually supported by an affidavit that shows probable cause, forget it. And even then, I can't even imagine a search warrant that could describe any kind of instrumentality of a crime to be lodged in somebody's brain. It's just not a possibility. I didn't mean to go too far afield there, but that's basically what I wanted to say just on the moment there. So.
Yeah, no, that's at least that's how Matthew and I were. We again had the friend anniversary, right? Because that's how the Facebook algorithm coined it. But that because we think alike, right? And I think all intelligent people eventually arrive at the same conclusion. It's very hard. It's very hard for people to recognize that your government is predatory. It's literally hunting you down, right? In every method possible. And by hiding the traps, once you're in a trap, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a port, whether it's a school system, right? That's it. They're just moving the pawns off the chessboard, right? So that's the same agenda. It's very important to understand that it's part of the agenda, because if we still just concentrate on one tentacle, which is family court, or again exploiting the human nature, female nature, male nature, right? That's still not addressing the core problem. And I feel that, at least people who stick with me in my public work, Rudy, thank you for joining. That's a great example. So just I want to quote a random comment, right, that came. So business like your health, like everything, right? Family law is a tentacle of a large octopus. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We're dealing with a monster with multiple tentacles, and family court is just one of the tentacles.
So
Go ahead.
can I say something on that about that comment? And I agree with that comment, and here's why. I want to say this with some 100%. I'm certain, okay, that the government uses threat, duress, and coercion. When a protective services comes out to your house and they bring the police, they don't even have the right to come in your house, search you, or bother you, or intimidate you. But tell me it's not going to be intimidating when you see a police officer, you got a gun, you got a police car out front of your house. If you're at work and you get served papers by a sheriff, this is just, to me, it's just so much threat, duress, and coercion. And what is at stake is your children. So you will do anything if you're a loving, fit, able, willing parent. And so it like an octopus, like you said, I agree with that comment. There's so many more tentacles, child support enforcement, these clerk of courts, that, there's so many other people that are involved that they just have their hands in everything. It's almost like you can't go anywhere without being reminded that you're still a prisoner of this system and you won't be free. And even if you walked away and you say, I can't do it, because a lot of people tell people, oh, you should walk away. You're still bonded. They'll come get you. They will arrest you for not complying with jurisdiction, complying with the rules of this court. So it's like there's three branches of government, from what I know: judicial, executive, and legislative, right? But they're going to go ahead and make the law, and they're going to be the ones that enforce the law. So I don't know, maybe Matthew can, TW can chime in on this. How can they do this, and why do they do this when it comes to our rights of these three branches of government?
Well, the three branches of government are actually, a lot of people think it's the three branches are, what is it, executive, I forget, judicial, and legislative. But the truth is, the three branches are slavery, extortion, and genocide. And all three of those branches come together in the family court, and it's a reality. The truth is, I want to wake up.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, just to interject, because exactly my. There's a meme making rounds on the internet that what are the three branches? I think I certainly remember one of them. It's pedophiles, right? And then goes pedophiles, journalists and liars or politicians or something like that. So just another take on what you're saying. Yes, yeah.
True. I was just gonna say, in a more whimsical tone, I really want to wake up in a world where nobody wants to work at the courthouse. Nobody wants to have the job of being a marshal in the court, in the kind of people that, can you imagine if nobody ever took the job being a camp guard at Auschwitz? There were people whose job, maybe they weren't actually directly committing murder, but the fact that they are there, shouldering a shoulder weapon and marching around the perimeter of the camp, that kind of, camp guard mentality is the same thing as the person who works in the courthouse, the marshal, who intimidates, who is there to, frighten people and so forth. And can you imagine if nobody actually took those jobs? Now, I know it's a sad fact that capitalism holds that all together, but I just want to wake up in a world where nobody wants to work at the courthouse, and the only people there are the judges. And nobody else is there to do any paperwork for them. Nobody else is there to assist them. That would be a great world. If everybody knew what was going on in family court, nobody would take those jobs. And hopefully family court would just absolve or dissolve by itself. But that's my dream.
Roman, can I add something to this? Since you guys know, I came from the Fathers' Rights movement, right? I was originally on the Fathers' Rights movement with the largest platform in the world. They reached 35 million people. I can attest to that. They have 800 and something thousand followers. One of the things that I saw in common with a lot of the fathers I talk, and I will never, talk about the privacy of any individual names, but I saw a lot of the people that were the petitioners in these cases were people that work in government. So if there was a petitioner, it was, it was somebody in law enforcement, it was somebody in a government, it was somebody whose brother is this well-known attorney. It was somebody that knew somebody, and the instrument or the tool that they used to abuse the other parent was the court system. The court system was designed for justice. It was designed to find justice, but all I've seen is it be as an instrument and a tool, as a weapon, weaponized by one parent to harm the other and then claim victory, where I thought we were all about the kids. We should be leaving the children out of the fighting. So how are the children so inserted into this fight? If I can just say, we got to learn to leave the children out of this. The children should not be in this fight. They should not be used as a weapon. They should not be the collateral damage. The other family, there's so many people that are so affected by this that they got to stop. It's almost to the point where we're losing more people every day to suicide that we don't talk about. And I saw that a lot. I have a lot of inbox messages where those people are no longer with us. And it does affect me at night personally. I had to take a step back from the father's rights movement. I had to take a step back from advocating for a moment because I had a mother call me and say, hey, thank you for being there for my son, but he's no longer with us. And it hurts me to think that we're losing some of the greatest people in our world because these are the loving, fit, able, willing parents. These are not the deadbeats. These are not the drug addicts. These are the people that are willing to change their whole life, act as accordingly to this whole system, even though it's only designed to suppress and enslave all of us. Even if you're not in it, you could be married to somebody and they have a child and you're a stepfather, you will be affected by it too. You don't have to actually even have a child in family court to be affected by family court right now. And I bet you there's a lot of people in the audience that will say the same thing, that their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their new husband, they're fighting, they're going through depression. And it's all because of a family court system that was supposed to be designed for the best interests of the children. And it's a farthest thing from the best interests of the children to destroy either any parent.
Derek is actually saying exactly that. Everybody is affected directly and indirectly. I would say that we are facing, of course, intergenerational parental alienation, right? And the government is taking the father. Usually, it's the father out of the picture because the children grow. There's abundant research on that. Grow up more promiscuous, right? Boys grow up, more prone to end up in jail, and that's what the government wants, right? It wants people on the streets. It wants people, broken. It wants to fill the prison industrial complex, which is also for profit, right? They own the musical industry. It's coming out more and more recently.
Yeah.
So we know that, and when you mention suicide, which is a topic that we probably need to educate just a complete show or maybe more than one show, right? Certainly. But, we are losing, like people who are affected, other victims, right? But the government is gaining because that's what they want. Just one less person, right? Because they say the realm that we live in is overpopulated. Okay, so one of them deleted himself or herself, right? And that's important to understand because we speak about tentacles, but what's the octopus? The octopus is the agenda. It's completely godless agenda. It's spiritual war. That's what is happening here is satanic. It's demonic. Many people start realizing that. So Derek is putting a lot of very good quotes. It's the Khrushchev said that we'll take America without firing one shot, right? Again, I was born in the Soviet Union, so when for Americans, when people mention constitution or the lack of constitution, right? Communists take over, they think it's like something out of like political fiction. No, it's not. It happened, and I will keep repeating that, right? Happened in Russia, was a very successful, large country, right? Very rich with a lot of resources. Was taken over by communists. Tens of millions of people got decimated in Gulag. Happened in Germany, happened in China, happened in Cambodia. So that's what's happening right now in America. They're not hiding it. They're not hiding it, right?
No.
Go ahead. I see that you.
They're not hiding it. I was part of the music business, so I was in that inner circle for many, many years. There is a inner circle. I'm not going to go deep into it. We're not going to talk about the Illuminati on the show right now, but there is. Supposedly,
next show.
This is a topic that I know very much about, but I'll just touch on it. There is a two-God system. The God that these people serve is the one that rules this earth, and this earth is we know that was given to Lucifer, the angel, the devil, and so this is their world. So they used it in God we trust, but the real God gave His only begotten Son, who was beaten and put in jail, and he was told that he was wrong, and he was even his disciples are all thrown in jail. We're not going to go into religion. I don't want to go down that whole road, but there is supposedly two gods, because if you think about it, the agenda that they're pushing with the rainbow, which I don't want to lose a bunch of fans and hate me for it. I'm not against or for it. But if everybody thought like those people for just a moment, just be reasonable and logical for a moment, we wouldn't even have children. We would stop creation. If we would allow, if we continue to allow abortions, I'm pro-life. I don't care if anybody comes after me on this, but how can we allow someone to commit this heinous act of offing a child who didn't have a word, and a father who we know now we can do a DNA testing before the birth and say that this is the father? How can the father have zero rights to be able to say, hey, listen, give me the child if you feel like this, and not give that child to a father? There's so much more deeper that the government has put their hands in. We can just touch the Illuminati for only 1 second, because I was on TV. I did have millions of followers, and I was with Akon, who now has been somewhat blacklisted, if you want to call it, because he got a loan from China to make sustainable energy in Africa, which is a great thing that he's developing other countries. You don't hear much of our music. You don't hear of us anymore, because what we're doing is not supporting this government right now. He's a foreign diplomat in Africa. I am here advocating for children's rights, for less government, for more of God, which when I say God, I don't support a politician. I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican or a libertarian. I support the real God. So when I wash my hands of this sin and this other God that these people are worshiping, that's so satanic, that we would even use these children, which is pedophilia, to molest them, because the term molestation is unwanted touching. To go into these children's lives and touch them, our government is molesting our families, our homes, our children's, and even every single body. But they're so scared to speak up that it's hard to even get people to follow even my single page or even this page. It's sometimes hard because they're scared that somebody will see that they're affiliated with somebody who stands so firm. And I hate to say that, because people like Cash Jackson, I support him very strongly, and he has a strong opinion. And people will say, well, why do you support Cash Jackson? Well, Cash Jackson's just a father. He's a human being. He served our country. He actually is the one who defended the Constitution. For him to come home, I think he's an American hero. You don't have to like me or like my opinion, but we can agree to disagree on things. This is the way our government was created. We were all created equal, from what I know. All men were created, or should be created equal, under one God. In God we trust. You go in that courtroom, there's no God in that courtroom.
Even though they sit, in New York, they sit under that exactly wording, and it's completely godless, of course. It's another mockery of the population. They just laugh in our faces. Yeah, actually, these are heavy topics that we should be diving deeper into that, because it's rehashing the stories. After a certain point, they're all similar, right? It's parental alienation, and these are the corrupt courts, right? Nobody listens. So we know all that. The question is, what do we do with that, right? So, and the names that you mentioned, Cash Jackson, Robert Garza, right? Jeff Younger, we all know the stories, right? That the people who are out there but then these stories, or these public people, you can count them on the fingers of both hands, right? Across the United States, the great United States. Now, I did a quick calculation. So I'm being tortured by Richmond County Family Court. It's just a family court. So in New York, if you are not married, or if you're already divorced, right, your cases are funneled into family court. There's also Supreme Court where the divorce cases are handled, right? So family court has 5,000 active cases at every given point, right? So every case involves two parents, usually like on average 2 children, something like that. But let's go with parents. So you have 10,000 parents, being affected at any given moment by family court, right? Let's assume, I came from the MBA background, right? Business, so like analytics is my forte. I like it. So, and many times you need to make decisions or arrive to certain conclusions with incomplete data, but you can make reasonable assumptions. And many decisions in business are made because you never reach perfect data, especially in courts when they don't disclose the data. So let's assume you have 10,000 parents, involved in family court. Let's assume you have an equal amount of parents, number of parents involved in family court. So you have 20,000 people actually affected, right? On Staten Island. Staten Island has 200,000 people population, or maybe 500, right? Something like that. So roughly you have between 5 and 10% of the population, right, who are actively involved at any given moment, right, on Staten Island. So if you extrapolate it 5 to 10%, it's millions of people are affected by family court, and that's just in a given moment, right? Look backward, generations that go back, right? Because the court in New York the family court has been established 60 years ago by Nelson Rockefeller. He signed or actually before him, but he signed into law. Speaking about Illuminati, right? The Family Court Act. So out of these millions of victims, right, and millions of, where are they? Where are the victims? Why so few parents are vocal? Where are more, people like Matthew, like Coach Amul, right, like Roman, like Cash Jackson, like Jeff? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? So what do we do with that? And that's a question that I cannot wrap my mind around. So I'd be curious to hear your opinion, gentlemen.
So let me jump real quick on this. I build my platform myself. I have a couple volunteers. Obviously, I learned a lot of good stuff from the Fathers' Rights movement on how to operate a major platform. I've been in media my whole life, but I have to always keep in mind, because I was in media and I was blackballed because I don't support this. So I don't want to go deep into the Freemasons or anything like this right now in the show, but I'm not part of certain organizations anymore, or I don't donate money to these organizations. So even a platform like Facebook can be deplatformed in just a blink of an eye if somebody wants to make a comment or complaint. So I have to always keep in mind that I try to build meaningful relationships, because they still have control of me. Even though I left this inner circle, I am still controlled by the inner circle. And someone asked me the other day when I went out in public and they wanted a picture with me, and I said, they said, where are you going to do your next show? And I said, I don't do too many shows. I like to go to my house and stay to myself, because I know that if I go somewhere, I feel like I'm being abused or exploited. And I'm not just about here for fame. I'm here to make a difference before I leave. If I do anything for my child or people that I love, like you guys, let me be and leave a legacy of my work behind for the world to see that this is what he stood for. And he stood for Jesus, and he stood for these children. And that would be my greatest accomplishment, not the cars I drive, not the Ferrari I owned, or not the houses I had, but let me leave a legacy that I showed my son how to fix a car. I showed him how to play baseball. Let him know I love him. To know that I'm personally missing these moments because of a simple sentence called the first right of refusal being held right now because of a temporary order. I can't never forgive these people, even though I'm commanded to forgive. I say I forgive them, but truly, it's so hard that me and God wrestle every night that I can forgive these people in this government for taking something away that my son will never get back. So for me, I use this platform, media and things of that nature, to leave a positive impact on the world, because I know that it's not going to end anytime soon until we all stand together. Because they employ so many people. The government employs such a huge population, and they have spouses, and these people that I want to say almost 30% of our entire population in the US is employed or paid or contracted with the government. They're in bed with the government. That's just my take on that. And Matthew, I'm going to chime in.
I just say we got to tell everybody about this. We have to literally shout it from the rooftops. I find myself doing it, and I wonder if people think, he's gone off the deep end. But everyone needs to know what's going on, because it's only a question of time. The rising tide lifts all boats, as it were. And I think this rising tide of worldwide communism will eventually come to affect everybody. So we really need to be aware of it as it's happening and call it out in the moment. And so that's kind of that's where I'm at. I'm in a really cranky mood today, but it really gets to me, because it's hard to believe that that it's happening, but it is, and we have to accept it. It's not just a question of, again, what code section or those kind of things, but understanding what we're facing. And I think calling it for what it is and speaking this truth to the people in power, to the judges. I think they need to be told what they're doing. They need to be reminded that what they're doing is truly awful and truly not something that a person who's wearing a quasi-religious attire and wants to be addressed as being honorable, they should realize what they're doing is not honorable. And in many cases, they're not worthy of the title, Your Honor. And I'll leave it at that. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, we're at an hour mark, so that's usually where we jump off. I just I also I cannot stay silent. I have to add on that. I was of the same opinion, Matthew, that you need to speak to the judges and tell them what they are. And I was very open with my judge. I didn't cross the line. In my opinion, she thought that I crossed the line multiple times, but I remained respectful. I said just things that I thought need to be said, even from again religious perspective, right? So I'm Jewish, and in my faith, you are commanded essentially to give person a chance to come back to God, right? So you give them a chance, and by exposing them, or tell them what you are doing is wrong. You're behaving like a Nazi, right? You give them a chance essentially to comprehend what they're doing and maybe repent, right? So
Yeah.
so in that sense, we need to be talking to them. But I came to the conclusion that this is actually useless because they serve, like you said, you alluded to, Amul, a darker force, and they act like robots. So it's really useless. It's pointless, right? It's not something that you can say to them or use like a beautiful argument. You have a lawyer, you have a licensed lawyer, with a ton of experience, right? Coming, T. Matthew Phillips, coming in front of judges and still being ignored. They don't care about law, right? What's important to understand, especially for laymen, and again, I have great familiarity with law myself, and I was in that fantasy that we live under rule of law. We're not. Rule of law is another illusion that they created for us, right? Because it gives people the illusion we're not entangled in the court, that government has some boundaries and they have rights. So neither is true. It's just words on paper, right? There's no law. They don't care about law. They don't care about ethics. They're probably afraid, blackmailed, stupid, right? They act like robots. So that's not really the solution. In my opinion, my humble opinion, we need to be talking to other people, and that's where I struggle because you have parents whose children are being abused, right? Whether physically abused or psychologically abused, right? And they still don't stand up, for their children. They don't do shows like that. They don't make a Facebook post. I'm grateful for the audience. We all are, right? So you have people who are, slightly more passive. They share, right? They like, they write a comment, but they're not public. They're not showing their faces, their names, with all the imperfections, right? I have an accent. Everybody has a background, right? We are not perfect. None of us is perfect. Accusations were made, whatever, right? But be out there. Show the people that we are real people. We are, look at us, right? We are not perfect, but we are normal. We are normal. We just want to be fathers, right? Or mothers, for that matter. So, and the more people will be there, right? Speaking about that, being vocal, being out there, sharing our pain, right? That's how the change will come. So I think that's a long-term solution. But I'm very frustrated with the general apathy and fear, and spinelessness of the population. I don't know, to what extent the abuse needs to be taken for people to actually just speak out. Nobody calls for any rebellion, right? Nobody organizes any type of groups. We just be out, tell your story, right? Like what happened with this fake pandemic, right? People share the stories, and that's how we were able to collectively to break the narrative. So the same thing needs to be done with family courts. The more people speak out, they break the government narrative. So that's my only solution that I see right now.
And so for my closing argument here on this one, guys, is we have to share information. And one of the websites that I found that's so helpful that we can use, if we can get the word out, there's a website called noethics.net. I don't know who started it or how it started, but it is a website where you can find behaviors of judges, immoral attorneys, and if we'll contribute and share that information and we file the proper grievances, at least we will be able to tell somebody that this is not the person, or this is not the judge, or this is not, and come up with a legitimate reason why you don't want your case to be heard by that person. And we can find out the judge that is, and at least share that, because I know that we can't break and change the system overnight, but there's a lot of people that want their children now. So if we would share things like that, or we would talk to each other, if you know a judge who's acting unethically, and we would share that and file these complaints and grievances until we make changes. This we can do now. We can share that information. We can, and we have the duty and responsibility to redress our government. And if we don't exercise our First Amendment right without fear of jail, threat, duress, and coercion, we're not going to see change. So I would just ask that the people look at us that are sitting up here on this platform tonight as this is really their platform. This is your platform. This is the people, we the people. we're just here right now. But even my platform is there for you guys. And I wrote, Roman does share and talk a lot and get involved with a lot of other people to help them in a situation. We will fight for you. I will fight for you personally. Don't give up hope. Don't give up your faith. And don't ever turn your back, because together we can unite, and united we will stand. If that's my closing argument tonight. You know, that's what I got.
That's an excellent closing argument, Council. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Roman. If anybody wants to go check out Amul Vision, I would love to have you guys on my platform. Come on as a guest. I know, T. Matthew, I got to interview you on the Father's Rights Movement. You are a brilliant man, honorable yourself, worthy of the honor. And Roman, you yourself are worthy of the honor of saying you're an honorable man to go out here and fight for all of us and all of the parents in the world. So thank you so much for your work, both of you guys here on the TRoman Show. And I will continue to spread the word that this is a great platform to help care the love for our children.
Thank you. Thank you for your work as well, Coach. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Matthew, any parting words, or we'll just jump off?
I think it's about time to close the show. So,
okay. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see everyone next week, next video. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you.